going on, everybody? It's Unboxing Reviews here, and welcome back to another video. So recently, Marvel Games completely surprised us all at the Game Awards as they announced Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. And as a massive fan of the first two games, this is definitely something that I want to start covering on the channel. So in today's video, we're of course going to be talking about pretty much everything that we know so far, as well as breaking down the game's announcement trailer. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order is a new action RPG made by Team Ninja that is exclusive to Nintendo Switch and will release sometime in 2019. Now, the game features a brand new storyline where heroes and villains unite in a race across the Marvel Universe to find the Infinity Stones before Thanos, Corvus Glaive, Cull Obsidian, Proxima Midnight, Supergiant, and Ebony Maw use them to unleash cosmic chaos. You can play solo, team up with friends by playing online, offline via local wireless, or simply pass a Joy-Con controller to a friend so they can join your team. And with another pair of Joy-Con controllers, 4 players can team up on one system, which is very cool. Now then, let's actually break down the game's trailer. So first up, we have this awesome shot of Gamora, Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon, better known as the Guardians of the Galaxy. And if you listen carefully, it sounds like Nolan North will once again be voicing Rocket, which is great news. Now, like me, I'm sure the first thing that you all noticed from this trailer was the game's distinct art style, which unlike the previous games in the franchise are cel shaded and much similar to the graphics seen in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Well, what you may not know is that during early development on the original Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Raven Software used cel shading technology similar to their previous title, XMen Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse, but obviously that style of graphics was dropped at some point during early development. Here we can see Proxima Midnight with an army of Outriders behind her, which are of course the creatures which we recently saw in Avengers Infinity War, and we don't actually see the player attacking them in the trailer, so I'd imagine that we'll probably be taking them on much later on in the game's story. Here we get a great look at some of Groot's combat moves, which include him throwing vines everywhere with Rocket on his back, but more on that later. So one of many characters that people were surprised to see absent from this trailer was Captain Marvel, but as you can see from this gameplay, the Guardians of the Galaxy are taking on an army of Kree soldiers. Now, I know that they are obviously helping Ronan, but you gotta think, if the Kree are in this game, then surely Carol Danvers can't be far behind. Here we can see Gamora, which is of course a character that can kick enemies and attack them with her sword, which she also uses when performing a very cool new jump slam attack. So in what looks to be Star-Lord's special move, we see Quill boost himself into the air and start shooting Ronan the Accuser whilst being upside down. Now this could be a reference to what Star-Lord did during the battle on Titan in Avengers Infinity War, but then again it might just be a coincidence, but still it is a very cool move. Here we get our very first in-game look at Ultron and his sentries in Manhattan, all of which have great designs, but I have to admit, Ultron's voice definitely needs work. It just sounds too human for me, so I hope that they'll at least add a more robotic filter to the character in the final build of the game. We also can't forget the fact that Ultron is holding the Mind Stone, so it'll be interesting to see what he plans to do with that in the game's story. Here we can see Iron Man shooting a beam from his arc reactor at the raft inmates, which bounces off what must be Captain America's shield, as we can see an effect that is clearly themed after it. Next up, we have a great close-up here of Captain America and Iron Man, looking very similar to their MCU counterparts, which I'm actually really glad to see, because personally, I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has really refined both of these characters' costumes. Here we get another great close-up, this time of Hulk and Thor. Now, Hulk's definitely got a Ruffalo Hulk-inspired haircut going on there, and I would say that Thor looks to be a mix between the comics and the MCU, but both definitely look really cool in this game. We also get to see the Hulk taking on a bunch of Ultron sentries, one of which is actually gold and purple. He can smack them into the ground and also perform his famous thunderclap ability in what looks to be Avengers Tower, as it is mentioned as one of the game's many locations in the official press release. Now this is an awesome shot in the trailer because here we get a really great close-up look at Spider-Man's costume in the game, which I'm really liking the look of. So in this shot, Star-Lord, Drax, Gamora, and Rocket and Groot are taking on the Sandman. Now going back to what I said earlier, we can see that Rocket is on Groot's back again, and while everyone has their own separate coloured outline, probably for multiplayer, Rocket and Groot are both outlined in green, making 4 outlined characters, which was actually the limit of characters that you could have in a team in the original Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. So I have to assume that the same will probably apply to the 3rd installment, which also means that my theory of Rocket and Groot being one character may actually be correct, which isn't crazy because Marvel games did do the same thing in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And before we move on, if you look to the right, you'll see that Spider-Man is also with the Guardians, but his character model doesn't actually have a coloured outline, so I'm fairly certain that he's not part of the player's team at this time and is instead just an AI character, possibly for story reasons. Now this moment in the trailer got me really excited because here we can see Spider-Man taking on the Hand, and if they're in this game then that could also mean that characters like Daredevil, Punisher and Iron Fist could be showing up, which would be amazing. Here we can see Captain America spinning his shield around, attacking all nearby enemies before smacking the ground with his shield around a star effect, dealing devastating damage. Now I would probably say that this is my favourite moment in this entire trailer because I believe the last time that we saw the X-Men in a Marvel video game on console was the first LEGO Marvel superheroes. So to see Wolverine, voiced by the legendary Steve Blum, taking on Sentinels outside the X-Mansion is just amazing. Now here's something that you may have missed, because if you pause the trailer at the right second, you'll see that behind Wolverine is none other than the Vision, who looks to be sporting his most recent look from the comics, which looks very cool. Now Vision has yet to be confirmed as a playable character, but seeing as how he's behind 2 other playable characters in the trailer, I think it's safe to say that he'll also be playable too. But of course, we will just have to wait and see. Now this moment in the trailer gives me a great opportunity to talk about the heroic camera, which gets you closer to the action by shifting the view to an over-the-shoulder perspective, giving you a more immersive way to play single player or multiplayer on up to 4 systems. Now if you're not a fan of this camera angle, then don't worry, because as you can see from the trailer, it's completely optional, so you can still play this game with the exact same camera angle that you know and love from the first 2 games. However, as someone who played both of the originals, a third-person like camera angle was actually a feature that I always wanted to see implemented into these games, so to now see that it's actually a thing is just crazy, and honestly I might end up playing through the entire game with this camera angle because it is just so cool. Here we get a much better look at Ronan the Accuser, who, like I said earlier, is likely the reason for the attacking Kree army. Now here we have the Kingpin, yet another great Spider-Man villain, but also one to Daredevil and the Punisher. So with the Hand and Fisk in the game, hopefully we'll also see these heroes as playable characters, because that would be amazing. And before we move on, I also wanted to mention that I think the reason Fisk's cane is sparking and glowing purple is because he's put the Power Stone inside it, although that is just my theory, so I could be wrong. Now here's an interesting shot, because here we can see Nebula standing behind a Kree army. So this could be similar to what we saw in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where Nebula first worked with Ronan, who in this game is obviously in charge of the Kree army. So this game has currently showcased not 1, not 2, but 3 Spider-Man villains. This one, of course, being the Green Goblin, who just so happens to have the Time Stone, which is definitely not going to end well. Now here's a character that you don't see very often. This is the Iron Man villain known as Ultimo, who in the comics was once controlled by the Mandarin, although he has still fought Iron Man when not under the Mandarin's control, but that doesn't mean that the Mandarin won't be in the game. Here we see Thor performing a very cool lightning strike ground pound ability on a bunch of Ultron sentries on top of Avengers Tower. Now here we can see Rocket outside a destroyed X-Mansion as he's shooting at Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, and yes, he doesn't have Groot with him at this time, but I definitely think that this is from a cutscene, so I'm still standing by my theory that Rocket and Groot will play as one character in this game. Now I would definitely call this the trailer's money shot, because here we can see just a few of the playable characters, does, as the official press release states that the game features a huge cast of characters from the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men, and more. So the Avengers currently has the biggest roster in the game, with Black Widow, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Falcon, Hulk, Scarlet Witch, and if they're playable, Vision and Nick Fury. But obviously, there's always room for more, as I could definitely see them also adding Ant-Man, Wasp, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. The Guardians have the second biggest roster with Gamora, Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon. Then we have the Inhumans, which currently only consist of Lockjaw and Crystal, but I'm fairly certain that they will play as one character, similar to Rocket and Groot. And I'm not sure if we'll get the full Inhumans team, but I at least hope to see Black Bolt and Medusa, because I think they would be so much fun to play as in this game. Now, Spider-Man could maybe be considered an Avenger, but I wanted to talk about him separately, because I'd love to see some characters from the Spider-Verse like Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. And like I said earlier, the game's official press release states that heroes and villains unite in the story, so maybe we'll also see villains like Venom being playable. Now that would be awesome. Lastly, we have the X-Men, and currently we only know of one member from the team that is in this game, and that is of course Wolverine. But obviously there will be more X-Men that I'm sure Marvel Games will announce at a later date. Hopefully some of the classics like Cyclops, Jean Grey, Colossus, and maybe, if we're lucky, Deadpool, because he would be an amazing addition to this game. And last but most certainly not least, we get this epic shot of Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet and all 6 Infinity Stones. And I have to say, even though this feels like a reboot, it's still really cool to finally see Thanos in a Marvel Ultimate Alliance video game, because there was concept art of him in the first game, but he was obviously nowhere to be seen in the sequel, as it was an adaptation of the Civil War storyline from the comics. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. Now, online, there definitely seems to be a split opinion on this game, whether it be because of the graphics or exclusivity. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of exclusivity, as I'd prefer for as many people as possible to be able to play a game, but I still think that this one looks like a ton of fun. And while I'm always more concerned about a game's fun factor, I actually quite like the game's cel-shaded comic-like graphics. They look really cool to me. Anyway guys, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Stay tuned for lots more videos real soon, and as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.